The conference room on Galactic Council Station Harmony 7 felt too warm. Ambassador Chen Wei sat at the curved negotiation table and watched the Verkathi delegation whisper among themselves. Their chittering voices sounded like glass scraping against metal. Chen had been negotiating with the Verkathi consortium for 6 months. 6 long months of listening to their lies about mineral shipments. 6 months of watching them change contract terms at the last minute. 6 months of their representatives clicking their mandibles in what passed for laughter when she raised objections. The Verkathi were insectoid creatures, tall and thin with 4 arms and compound eyes that glittered like black diamonds. Their exoskeletons were a deep purple color that shifted to green under the station lights. They moved with quick, jerky motions that made humans uncomfortable. Trade Minister Zixthar stood at the head of the Verkathi delegation. His antenna twitched as he spoke in the common trade language. His voice came out high and buzzing through the translator device. We must discuss the new pricing structure for the titanium contracts. The Verkathi consortium believes the current rates are unfavorable to our interests. Chen kept her face neutral. This was the 3rd time they had tried to renegotiate prices on contracts that were already signed and active. The current rates were exactly what both parties had agreed to 3 months ago. Minister Zixthar, we have a signed agreement. The prices were set fairly and according to market values at the time. Zixthar's mandibles clicked together rapidly. Market values change. The consortium requires better terms or we will be forced to delay shipments. It was blackmail. Pure and simple. The human colonies needed those minerals for their expansion projects. The Verkathi knew this and were using it as leverage. Chen took a slow breath. She had dealt with difficult negotiators before. The key was to remain calm and professional. Never let them see you angry. Never let them know they were getting to you. I will need to consult with Earth before making any changes to our existing contracts. However, I should point out that deliberately delaying contracted shipments would be a breach of our agreement. The Verkathi delegation chittered among themselves. Chen noticed the Draxian observer in the corner of the room watching the exchange with all 3 of his eye stalks. The Draxians had been trading partners with humanity for decades. They knew humans well. Zixthar leaned forward. His front legs scraped against the table surface. Your colonies are weak. Your species spreads itself too thin across too many worlds. You need our minerals more than we need your credits. Perhaps if humanity had stronger leadership, you would not be in such a desperate position. Chen felt her jaw tighten but kept her voice level. Minister, personal attacks are not productive. Let us focus on the business at hand. Business? Zixthar's voice took on a mocking tone. What business? Your species fumbles through space like hatchlings. Perhaps the deaths at New Providence Colony would not have occurred if your people had proper supplies. How many died there? 200? 300? The room went silent. New Providence had been a disaster. A failed atmospheric processor had killed 147 colonists before help could arrive. Many of them had been children. The investigation was still ongoing, but there were questions about whether delayed mineral shipments had played a role in the processor malfunction. Chen stood up slowly. Her movements were careful and deliberate. She saw the Draxian observer's eye stalks suddenly swivel toward the exit. The alien was already moving toward the door. Minister Zixthar. Those colonists were families. They were people who died in a tragedy. Using their deaths as a negotiation tactic is beneath contempt. Zixthar clicked his mandibles in what Chen recognized as their version of laughter. Tragedy? It was incompetence. Human incompetence. Just like this negotiation. Just like your entire species. You are soft. You talk and talk but never act. You have no strength, no spine. No wonder you cannot even protect your own young. Chen reached up and began unfastening her formal diplomatic sash. The blue and gold fabric had been presented to her by the Secretary General himself. It represented her authority as Earth's voice in the Council. She folded it carefully and placed it on the table. When she looked up at Zixthar, her face was completely calm. Her voice was quiet and steady. The kind of quiet that made people lean forward to listen. Now you have really pushed it. The Draxian was already out the door. His 3 legs carried him down the corridor at a speed that suggested panic. Behind him, he could hear the confused chittering of the Verkathi. Ambassador Chen, there is no need for dramatics. The Verkathi delegate's voice had lost some of its mocking tone. We are simply conducting business negotiations. Chen walked toward her briefcase. Her movements were still slow and deliberate. She pulled out a data pad and began entering commands. No, we are done negotiating. What we are doing now is documenting. The Verkathi delegates looked at each other. Their antennae twitched in confusion. Zixthar took a step closer to the table.
Documenting what?
Everything. Chen did not look up from her data pad. Every contract violation, every delayed shipment, every change term, every threat, every insult, all of it. Time-stamped, recorded, witnessed. I have been patient for 6 months. I have given you chance after chance to honor your agreements. I have absorbed your insults and your condescension because I believed we could find a peaceful resolution. She finally looked up. Her eyes were cold.
But you made one mistake.
You insulted the dead. You mocked children who died because they could not breathe. And you did it thinking I was weak because I was patient. Zixthar tried to laugh again, but the sound came out uncertain. You are one human. We are the Verkathi Consortium. We control mineral rights across 12 sectors. What can you possibly do? Chen pressed a button on her datapad. Within 20 minutes, every human colony will receive this documentation. Within an hour, it will be filed with the Galactic Trade Commission. Within 2 hours, every species that has ever been cheated by the Verkathi Consortium will have full access to our records showing your pattern of contract violations. She smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. And within 3 hours, human legal teams will begin filing sanctions, criminal fraud charges, trade embargo recommendations, asset freezes. We have treaties with 17 species and mutual defense pacts with 6. Every single one will receive a formal request for support backed by this evidence. The room had gone completely silent. Even the Verkathi had stopped chittering. You thought patience meant weakness. Chen picked up her diplomatic sash and put it back on. It meant I was building a case. It meant I was documenting everything. It meant I was giving you every opportunity to do the right thing. But you took my patience and threw it in my face. You mocked dead children. She closed her briefcase with a sharp snap. So now we stop being patient. Now we show you what humans do when you push us past our limits. We do not rage. We do not make threats. We simply win, completely, thoroughly, within the bounds of every law and treaty, and we make sure everyone watches. Chen walked toward the door. Halfway there, she paused and looked back at the frozen Verkathi delegation. Oh, and Minister Zixthar? In case you were wondering? That phrase I used. Now you have really pushed it? You might want to research what happens when humans say that. Ask the Kryn. Ask the Talran raiders. Ask anyone who mistook our patience for weakness. She left the room. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. In the corridor, she found the Draxian observer waiting for her. All 3 of his eye stalks were focused on her face. Ambassador Chen, you have my species' full support. We remember what happened to the Kryn. We will not trade with the Verkathi until this matter is resolved. Chen nodded. Thank you, Observer Grax. I appreciate your people's wisdom. The Draxian hesitated. If I may say so, Ambassador, I have studied human history extensively. I know what comes after those words. The Verkathi do not. They will learn. Chen walked toward her office. Behind her, the Verkathi delegation was still standing in the conference room, trying to understand what had just happened. They would figure it out soon enough. All across the galaxy, on human ships and stations and colonies, people were receiving her documentation. Legal teams were already analyzing it. Trade officials were making calls. Military liaisons were reviewing treaties. The Verkathi Consortium had made a simple mistake. They thought humans were weak because humans tried to avoid conflict. They did not understand that trying to avoid something was not the same as being unable to do it. And now they would learn what every other species in the galaxy already knew. When a human says those words, when a human tells you that you have really pushed it, the time for patience is over. What comes next is not anger, not rage, not emotional outbursts. What comes next is focus, determination, and an industrial capacity for problem solving that would not stop until the job was done. The Verkathi would wish they had just honored their contracts. Archive entry, Kryn Imperial War Records, year 2156 Earth Standard Time. Translated from High Kryn by Linguistic AI Systems. Restricted access. Eyes only. The first contact with the human species occurred in the outer reaches of Sector 447. Commander. Thrax of the Imperial Warfleet was conducting routine patrol operations when his scanners detected primitive vessels moving between star systems. The vessels were slow. Their shielding was basic. Their weapons were laughable compared to Kryn military technology. Commander Thrax reported back to the War Council that he had discovered a new species that would make excellent subjects for the Empire. The War Council approved immediate action. This was standard protocol. The Kryn Empire had been expanding for 3 centuries. They had conquered 42 species. The humans would be number 43. Commander Thrax attacked the first human colony ship without warning. The ship tried to flee but was too slow. Thrax disabled their engines and prepared to board. Then something unexpected happened. The humans transmitted a message, not a surrender, not a plea for mercy, a question. They asked why the Kryn were attacking. They offered to open diplomatic channels. They suggested there had been some kind of misunderstanding. Thrax found this amusing. He boarded the ship and took the crew prisoner. He sent them back to Kryn Prime as slaves. The Empire was pleased with his efficiency. Over the next 6 months, Kryn forces attacked 12 more human vessels. Each time, the humans tried to communicate. They sent messages in multiple languages. They offered trade agreements. They requested meetings. They asked to speak with Kryn leadership. The Kryn ignored all of this. Communication with prey species was beneath imperial dignity. The humans were weak. They ran from every fight. They never counterattacked. They just kept asking questions and sending diplomatic messages. War Master Zektar compiled a report for the Emperor. He wrote that humanity appeared to be a pacifist species with limited military capacity. He recommended full-scale invasion of their home system. He estimated the war would last 3 months at most. The Emperor approved. The invasion fleet assembled. 200 warships. The largest military operation the Kryn had launched in 50 years. They jumped into human space on a cold morning in December 2156. The humans were waiting, not with warships, with more messages. They broadcast on every frequency. They pleaded for peace talks. They offered to withdraw from disputed territories. They suggested neutral ground for negotiations. They asked the Kryn to please reconsider. The Kryn fleet advanced on Earth. They destroyed defensive satellites. They bombed orbital stations. The humans evacuated civilians and pulled their military forces back toward the inner system. They sent 47 separate diplomatic messages over the next week. Each one was more desperate than the last. The Kryn historians who reviewed these records later noted the tone of human communication. They described humans as seeming almost cowardly. The humans talked about preserving life. They mentioned that war would be tragic for both sides. They begged the Kryn to stop and think about what they were doing. Then the Kryn made their final mistake. A squadron of fighters attacked a hospital ship evacuating wounded civilians from Mars. The ship was clearly marked with medical insignia. It was broadcasting distress signals. It had no weapons and minimal shielding. The Kryn fighters destroyed it anyway. 312 people died. Most of them were children being evacuated from the Mars colonies. The attack was recorded by multiple human vessels and broadcast across their entire communication network. The diplomatic messages stopped. For 12 hours there was complete silence from the human side. The Kryn fleet celebrated. They assumed humanity had finally accepted defeat. They began planning the occupation of Earth. Then the humans transmitted one final message. It was short. It was direct. It was broadcast in High Kryn, so there would be no translation errors. The message said, "Now you have really pushed it." War Master Zektar did not understand what this meant. He would learn. The first wave of human counterattack hit the Kryn fleet 18 hours later. The humans did not come with their colony ships or their civilian vessels. They came with warships. Hundreds of them, ships the Kryn had never seen before. Ships that had been hidden in the outer system. Ships that had been waiting. The humans fought with a ferocity that shocked the Kryn. There was no hesitation, no mercy, no communication. They simply attacked. Every human vessel focused on destroying Kryn ships with cold efficiency. No warnings. No chances to surrender. Just methodical destruction. The battle lasted 14 hours. The Kryn lost 60 ships. The humans lost 12. War Master Zektar ordered a full retreat back to Kryn space. He expected the humans to celebrate their victory and return to their defensive positions. The humans did not stop. They followed. They pursued the Kryn fleet across 3 star systems. They hunted down every ship, every station, every outpost. When the Kryn tried to hide, the humans found them. When the Kryn tried to fight, the humans destroyed them. When the Kryn tried to surrender, the humans ignored them. Back on Earth, something else was happening. The human industrial capacity was shifting. Factories that made civilian goods stopped production. Within days, they were retooled to produce weapons, ships, ammunition. More factories were built. Construction went around the clock. Kryn intelligence officers could not believe what they were seeing. An entire species was mobilizing for total war. Not just their military. Everyone, every resource, every factory, every shipyard. The humans were not fighting to defend anymore. They were fighting to win. The Emperor called an emergency session of the War Council. He demanded to know how a species that had seemed so weak could suddenly become so dangerous. The historians presented their findings. They had studied human history. They found records of human conflicts on their home world. Wars that had killed millions, battles that had lasted years. Technologies developed specifically for the purpose of killing other humans more efficiently. The humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They were very good at it. The Kryn had mistaken patience for weakness. The humans tried to avoid war not because they feared it, but because they understood it. They knew what war meant. They knew what they were capable of doing. And they had tried desperately to avoid unleashing that capacity on another species. But the Kryn had pushed them past that point. They had killed children on a hospital ship. And now the humans were showing the Kryn what they were really capable of when they stopped trying to be peaceful. 3 months after the attack on the hospital ship, the human fleet arrived at Kryn Prime. They had destroyed every Kryn military installation between Earth and the Kryn homeworld. They had eliminated 89% of the Kryn military. They had done all of this without accepting a single offer of surrender. The human fleet took up position around Kryn Prime. They did not bombard the planet. They did not attack civilian targets. They simply waited, and they broadcast a message to the Emperor. The message explained that the human fleet could destroy every military installation on Kryn Prime within 6 hours. They could blockade the planet and prevent any ships from leaving or entering. They could do this for as long as necessary. The message offered one option for avoiding this outcome: unconditional surrender, complete disarmament, war crime trials for everyone involved in the attack on the hospital ship. The Emperor met with what remained of his war council. They discussed their options. They had none. The human terms were harsh, but they were not genocidal. The humans could have glassed Kryn Prime from orbit. They could have killed billions. But they did not. They simply demanded justice for the people who had been killed on the hospital ship. The Emperor accepted the terms. The Kryn Empire surrendered. War Master Zektar and the squadron leaders responsible for the hospital ship attack were arrested and handed over to human authorities. The Kryn military was disbanded. Trade agreements were signed under heavy human oversight. The war had lasted 4 months. The Kryn had lost 89% of their military forces. The humans had lost less than 12%. It was the most one-sided conflict in galactic history. In his final log entry before being taken into custody, War Master Zektar wrote, "We thought patience meant weakness. We thought their attempts at peace meant they feared war. We were catastrophically wrong. The humans tried to avoid war because they knew exactly what they were capable of doing. They gave us 47 chances to stop. We ignored everyone. When they finally stopped asking and started fighting, we had no chance. May the gods have mercy on any species that makes the same mistake we did." The records of the Kryn War spread throughout the galaxy. Every species studied them. Every military academy included them in training materials. Every diplomat learned to recognize the warning signs. The most important lesson was simple. When humans say certain phrases, when they use certain words, it means something specific. Those words mean that human patience has reached its limit. Those words mean that what comes next will not be negotiation or diplomacy, or attempts at peace. What comes next will be the full industrial and military capacity of a species that spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war against itself. Zix was having the best month of his life. The mining station at Theta 9 was a perfect target. Remote enough that help would take days to arrive. Rich enough to be worth the effort. And staffed by humans who seemed content to just pay his protection fees without causing trouble. Zix was young for a pirate captain. Only 23 cycles old. His scales still had the bright orange color of youth. His tail was long and flexible, marked with the traditional patterns of his homeworld. He commanded a crew of 15 raiders, all of them loyal and eager for profit. The Talron raiders had been working the frontier for 2 years now. They hit mining operations, cargo ships, and the occasional research station. Nothing too big. Nothing that would bring down the full weight of galactic security. Just enough to make a comfortable living. Theta 9 had been particularly easy. The human supervisor, a man named Marcus Stone, had negotiated reasonable protection payments from the very first visit. No fights, no drama, just business. Zix respected that. Of course, Zix and his crew had gotten a bit more aggressive over the past few weeks. The payments were good, but why not take a little extra? Some equipment here, some refined materials there. Maybe rough up one of the workers to remind them who was in charge. Marcus Stone never complained. He filed reports with Galactic Security like he was supposed to. He documented everything. He even tried to negotiate better terms a few times. But he never fought back. He never threatened. He just paid and documented and filed reports. Zix thought this was smart. Humans were known for being cautious. They preferred paperwork to violence. They would rather lose some money than risk lives. Zix could respect that kind of practicality even if he found it a bit boring. Not all of Zix's crew agreed. His second-in-command, an older Talron named Kresh, kept warning him about pushing too hard. Kresh had been raiding for 30 years. He had seen things. He knew things. He kept telling Zix to be careful with humans. "Do not mistake patience for weakness, boy," Kresh would say in his gravelly voice. "I have seen what humans do when you cross certain lines." Zix would laugh. What are they going to do? File another report? Send a strongly worded message? Humans talk and talk, but they do not act. Everyone knows this. Kresh would shake his head and walk away. But he kept watching Marcus Stone carefully during every raid. He noticed things that Zix did not. The way Marcus tracked every damaged piece of equipment. The way he recorded every face. The way his eyes followed each raider with a cold calculation that did not match his calm voice. Other miners at Theta 9 tried to warn Zix too. An old Draxian who worked in the refinery pulled him aside one day. "You should leave these humans alone. You are pushing too far. When they finally push back, it will be bad for you." Zix had laughed at that too. The old Draxian was probably just trying to scare him into taking smaller payments. Everyone wanted to protect their own interests. That was how the frontier worked. Then came the day that changed everything. It started like any other raid. Zix and his crew landed their ship at the station. They walked through the corridors taking whatever they wanted. Equipment, food, refined minerals. The usual stuff. Marcus Stone was in his office as always. He watched them on the security monitors. He documented everything. He looked tired. His face had the worn expression of someone who had been dealing with this situation for too long. Zix decided to visit Marcus directly. He wanted to discuss increasing the protection payments. Business was good. The operation was profitable. Surely they could afford to pay a bit more for security. He brought 3 of his crew with him. They swaggered into Marcus' office like they owned the place. In a way, they did. They had been running things at Theta 9 for months now. Marcus looked up from his desk. He did not stand. He did not look scared. He just looked at Zix with those same cold, calculating eyes. "What do you want, Zix?" Zix grinned, showing all his sharp teeth. "Time to discuss business, Marcus. Your operation is doing very well. I think our protection fees should reflect that success." Marcus sighed. "You already increased the fees twice this month. We have a deal, Zix. I would appreciate it if you would honor it. Deals change." Zix leaned against the desk. "Life is unpredictable. Costs go up. You understand?" While they were talking, one of Zix's crew members was wandering around the office. He was a young Talron named Vex, new to the crew and eager to prove himself. He picked up objects and examined them. He knocked over a frame on Marcus' desk. The frame fell to the floor. The glass cracked. The photo inside showed a young human girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She had Marcus' brown eyes and a huge smile. She was holding a rock, probably her first mining sample, the kind of picture every miner kept of their kids. Vex laughed. "Your daughter? She is cute. Where is she now?" Marcus stood up slowly. His hands were clenched at his sides. "She is visiting from the inner colonies, staying in the family quarters." Zix should have noticed the change in Marcus' voice. He should have seen the way the other human workers in the corridor had stopped what they were doing. He should have paid attention to Kresh, who was suddenly backing toward the door. But Zix was young and confident. He did not notice any of these things. He just saw an opportunity. Maybe we should increase security patrols in the family quarters too. Make sure everyone stays safe. For an additional fee, of course. The words had barely left his mouth when Vex made his fatal mistake. He picked up the photo frame and looked at the cracked glass. Shame if something happened to her. Frontier is dangerous, you know. Marcus went completely still. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet. Put down the picture. Vex laughed nervously. He was just making a joke. Just pointing out that bad things can happen on frontier stations. No need to get upset. Marcus took a step forward. His voice was still quiet, still controlled, but there was something underneath it now. Something that made Crash grab Zix's arm and start pulling him toward the door. Put down the picture. Vex, young and stupid, decided to push further. He held the picture up and pretended to examine it. You know what? Maybe I keep this. Remind you to pay on time. Marcus looked at Zix. When their eyes met, Zix finally understood what Kresh had been trying to warn him about. This was not the face of a scared miner. This was the face of someone who had been holding himself back for months. Someone who had been swallowing anger and frustration and rage because he wanted to avoid violence. Someone who had just reached his limit. Now you have really pushed it. Marcus said Kresh was already running. He knew what was coming. Zix tried to follow, but he was too slow. Too confused. He did not understand what was happening until it was too late. Marcus moved. Fast. Faster than any civilian should be able to move. His hand shot out and grabbed Vex's wrist. There was a sharp crack and Vex screamed. The picture frame fell to the floor. Marcus caught it with his other hand before it could break further. Then everything happened at once. The alarm system activated. Emergency doors slammed shut ceiling sections of the station. The mining crew that Zix had thought were just scared civilians suddenly moved with military precision. They had weapons. Real weapons. Not mining tools. Military-grade rifles, every one of them moved like soldiers. Because that was what they were. Former military. Some from Special Forces units. Some from Marines. All of them had been miners, but they had been other things before that. And they had not forgotten their training. Zix pulled his weapon, but a human woman shot it out of his hand before he could fire. The shot was perfect, professional. She was smiling. It was not a nice smile. Surrender now and you will live. Marcus' voice came over the station intercom. This is your only warning. Some of Zix's crew tried to surrender. Some tried to fight. Some tried to run. It did not matter. The humans moved through the station like a military strike team. They knew every corridor, every hiding spot, every escape route. Of course they did. It was their station. Zix made it to his ship. Kresh was already there, firing up the engines. 3 other crew members stumbled aboard. That was all that was left. 12 raiders dead or captured in less than 20 minutes. The ship lifted off. Zix expected the humans to fire on them. Instead, Marcus' voice came over their communication system. You can leave, Zix, but understand this. I have your ship identification. I have recordings of every raid. I have evidence of every theft and every threat. I have already sent it to Galactic Security. There was a pause. Then Marcus continued. You threatened my daughter. That was your mistake. I spent months being patient because I did not want anyone to die. I filed reports and paid your fees and hoped you would just go away. But you pushed too far. Another pause. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was cold. I am retired military. 12 years special operations. Every person on this station is former military. We came here to mine, to live peaceful lives, to be civilians. But you made us remember what we used to be. The ship cleared the station. Kresh set course for deep space. Zix sat in the captain chair and tried to process what had just happened. His crew was destroyed. His reputation was ruined. Galactic Security would be hunting him. Marcus' final words came through. If I ever see you again, Zix, if you ever threaten another human station, if you even think about coming back here, I will find you. And next time I will not let you leave. Do you understand me? The lecture hall at the University of New Andromeda was filled with students from 20 different species. They sat in specially designed seats that accommodated various body types. Some had multiple limbs. Some had tails. Some breathed different atmospheres and sat in specialized environment bubbles. Professor Kickstal stood at the front of the room. She was a Lumeni, with 4 eyes arranged around her head so she could see in all directions at once. Her skin was a soft blue color that glowed faintly in the dim lecture hall lighting. She had been teaching xenopsychology for 40 years. Today we discuss human psychology and behavior patterns. Professor Kickstall's voice was translated through the room speaker system. This is required knowledge for any student pursuing a career in diplomacy or interspecies relations. The final exam will include multiple scenarios involving human contact. You will be expected to identify warning signs and recommend appropriate responses. She activated the holo display. An image of a human appeared, rotating slowly. This is a standard human. Average height 1.7 meters, average mass 70 kilograms. No natural armor, no natural weapons, no enhanced senses. By most physical measures, humans are unremarkable. A student in the front row raised a tentacle. A young Quellian who seemed very eager. Professor, if humans are so unremarkable, why do we spend 3 full lectures studying them specifically? Professor Kickstall smiled with 2 of her mouths. An excellent question. Let me show you why. The display changed to show a graph. Along the bottom was a timeline. Along the side was a scale-marked escalation of response. Most species showed a steady diagonal line climbing from bottom left to top right. As provocation increased, so did response in a predictable, gradual pattern. The human line was different. It stayed flat along the bottom for a long time, showing minimal response to increasing provocation. Then at a certain point, it shot straight up to maximum response. The line looked like a hockey stick laid on its side. This is called threshold response behavior. Professor Kickstall pointed at the graph. Most species escalate proportionally. If you insult them, they insult you back. If you push them, they push back. The response matches the provocation in a predictable way. She tapped the human line. Humans do not work this way. They absorb provocation. They tolerate it. They try to negotiate and find peaceful solutions. They will accept losses, insults, and even attacks while continuing to seek diplomatic resolution. But there is a threshold, a line, and once you cross it, their response is not proportional. It is total, another student spoke up. A Verkathi, his mandibles clicking nervously. But why? Why not just escalate gradually like everyone else? That way both parties know where they stand. Professor Kickstall noticed which species had asked the question. She made a mental note. The Verkathi consortium had recently been in the news. Something about trade disputes with humans. She wondered if this student knew about that. The answer involves human biology and history. Let me explain. She changed the display to show human brain scans. Humans have extremely active stress response systems. When provoked, their bodies flood with chemicals, adrenaline, cortisol, others. These chemicals prepare them for intense physical activity. The display shifted to show historical footage. Humans fighting each other in various conflicts throughout their history. This stress response evolved because humans spent millions of years as both predator and prey on their homeworld. They needed to be able to switch instantly from calm to combat ready. That ability is still in their biology. But humans are also highly social. Professor Kickstall continued. They evolved in groups, tribes, communities. They needed cooperation to survive. So they also developed strong mechanisms for controlling aggression within their groups. They learned patience, compromise, negotiation, the ability to swallow anger and work together. A new student raised their hand. A Draxian with careful movements. So they have both aggression and control. But that still does not explain the threshold response. Exactly right. Professor Kickstall created a new display showing chemical buildup over time. Here is what happens. When humans are provoked, they use their control mechanisms to suppress their stress response. They stay calm. They negotiate. They try to find peaceful solutions. But the stress chemicals keep building up inside them. The body keeps preparing for fight or flight even while the mind says no. Stay calm. Keep trying. The graph showed stress levels rising higher and higher while external behavior remained calm. This can go on for a long time. Days, weeks, months. Humans are very good at maintaining control. But there is a limit. Eventually, the stress reaches critical levels. Or something happens that crosses a psychological line, and then all that accumulated response is released at once. The display showed the graph exploding upward. The result is not a proportional response to the final provocation. It is a total response to all the accumulated provocations. Everything they have been holding back comes out at once. And because humans are very good at violence when they choose to be, the result is often devastating for whoever pushed them past that threshold. Professor Kickstall pulled up case studies. Let me give you examples. First, the Kryn War. The display showed historical footage. The Kryn Empire attacked human vessels for 6 months, destroyed ships, took prisoners. The humans kept trying to negotiate. They sent 47 separate diplomatic messages. The Kryn mistook this for weakness. They kept attacking. Then they destroyed a hospital ship carrying evacuated children. The humans stopped negotiating. Within 4 months, they had destroyed 89% of the Kryn military and forced unconditional surrender. The class was silent. The footage showed the scale of human victory: ships, stations, entire fleets destroyed with brutal efficiency. Here is another example. Professor Kickstall changed the display. The Talron Raiders, a pirate group that harassed a human mining station for months. The humans paid protection fees, filed reports, tried to negotiate. The pirates kept pushing. They damaged equipment, hurt workers, increased their demands. Then the pirates threatened children. The display showed the aftermath. The pirates were destroyed in 34 minutes. 12 killed or captured. The leader barely escaped. The humans, who appeared to be civilian miners, turned out to be retired military. They had been holding back the entire time. When they stopped holding back, the fight was over almost instantly. A pattern emerges from studying these cases. Professor Kickstall highlighted key factors. Humans are most dangerous when you threaten innocence. Their protective instincts for young, for families, for civilians, these are the fastest way to cross their threshold. You can attack them directly and they will try to negotiate. Attack their children and they will destroy you. The Verkathi student raised a hand again. How do you know when you are approaching the threshold? Is there a way to tell before you cross it? Yes, Professor Kickstall smiled. This is the most important part of this lecture. Pay very close attention. Humans have developed verbal and physical warning signs. These are your indicators that you need to stop immediately. She brought up a list. Verbal warning signs. When humans say these phrases, you are at or past the threshold. Now you have really pushed it. That is the most famous one. Others include, you have crossed a line, I am done being patient, this ends now, you just made a big mistake. The most important characteristic is the tone. Humans often get quieter when they pass the threshold, not louder. If a human who has been speaking normally suddenly becomes very quiet and calm, that is a danger sign. They are not calming down. They are switching modes. Professor Kickstall pulled up videos showing human body language. Physical signs include removing formal clothing or accessories as if preparing for physical activity, clenching fists or jaw, sudden stillness after agitated movement, making direct unblinking eye contact, checking the locations of their companions or their exits. Most importantly, watch for changes in breathing. Humans take deep, controlled breaths when trying to maintain calm under stress. If they suddenly stop this and their breathing becomes shallow and rapid, their stress response has activated. You have seconds, not minutes. A student in the back spoke up. But if humans are so dangerous when provoked, why do we trade with them? Why do we allow them in the Galactic Council? Professor Kickstall had been waiting for this question. Because humans only become dangerous when you force them to. Under normal circumstances, they are peaceful, creative, cooperative partners. They make excellent allies. They honor treaties. They contribute to galactic culture and science. They are genuine in their desire for peace. She paused to let that sink in. The key is understanding that human patience is not weakness. It is a choice. They choose peace because they understand the alternative. They know what war costs. They know what they are capable of doing. And they genuinely prefer not to do those things. She pulled up a quote from a human philosopher. There is a saying humans have: speak softly and carry a big stick. It means you can be gentle and peaceful while still being capable of great strength. That is humanity in a nutshell. The display showed human achievements: art, music, literature, scientific discoveries, medical advances. Humans contribute enormously to galactic civilization. They are valued members of the community. The Galactic Trade Commission convened 3 days after Ambassador Chen Wei transmitted her documentation. The hearing room was packed. Representatives from 40 species sat in the gallery. News feeds from across known space were broadcasting live. The Verkathi Consortium delegation sat at their table looking smaller than they had during the negotiations. Trade Minister Zixthar's antennae were pressed flat against his head, a sign of stress among his people. His mandibles clicked softly, but without the mocking tone they had carried before. Ambassador Chen sat at the human delegation table. Her diplomatic sash was perfectly arranged. Her posture was calm and professional. She looked exactly like she had during 6 months of fruitless negotiations, except for her eyes. Her eyes were cold and focused. Commissioner Thelvar, a veteran Draxian who had overseen galactic trade disputes for 30 years, opened the proceedings. We are here to examine complaints filed by Earth's representative against the Verkathi Consortium. The charges are extensive. Contract fraud, deliberate delays of contracted shipments, systematic violation of agreed-upon terms, and intimidation of diplomatic personnel. He looked at Ambassador Chen. Ambassador Wei, you have submitted substantial documentation. The Commission has reviewed it. Would you like to present your case? Chen stood. She activated the display screen. Thank you, Commissioner. I will be brief. Over the past 6 months, the Verkathi Consortium has violated 14 separate contracts with human colonies and corporations. I have time-stamped evidence of each violation. Every altered term, every delayed shipment, every threat made when we objected. The screen filled with documents. Contracts with highlighted sections, communications logs, shipping manifests, financial records. Every piece of evidence was meticulously organized and cross-referenced. I attempted to resolve these issues through normal diplomatic channels. Chen's voice was steady. I filed complaints. I requested mediation. I negotiated in good faith for months. The Verkathi response was to increase their violations and mock our attempts at peaceful resolution. She pulled up audio recordings. Here is Trade Minister Zixthar telling me that human colonies are weak and poorly managed. Here he is suggesting that the deaths at New Providence Colony were caused by human incompetence. Here he is mocking those deaths in an official negotiation session. The recordings played. Every species in the gallery heard Zixthar mocking tone. His words about dead colonists. His insults. The room became very quiet. Chen continued. And here is my response. She played the recording of her saying those 7 words. Now you have really pushed it. Several species in the gallery stood up and moved toward the exits. The Draxian observers looked at each other and nodded. They had heard those words before. They knew what was coming. Commissioner Thelvar held up one hand. Order, please. Let Ambassador Wei finish her presentation. Chen pulled up new documents. After that meeting, I filed formal complaints with the Trade Commission. I also contacted every species that has trade agreements with the Verkathi Consortium. I provided them with copies of all documentation showing the pattern of contract violations. The screen showed a list of species. 17 of them. Each one had filed supporting complaints. Each one had suspended trade pending the commission hearing. Each one had discovered, when they reviewed their own records, that they had also been victims of Verkathi contract manipulation. I have also filed criminal fraud charges with Galactic Security. Chen's voice was calm but relentless. Attached evidence shows systematic fraud across multiple sectors. Asset freezes have been requested and granted pending this hearing. The Verkathi Consortium current accounts are locked. Their ships are grounded. Their operations are suspended. Trade Minister Zixthar tried to stand, but his legs seemed weak. Commissioner, this is excessive. We had some minor disputes, but nothing that warrants this kind of response. Ambassador Wei is overreacting. Chen turned to look at him. Her expression did not change. Minor disputes? You violated 14 contracts. You mocked dead children. You used delays in critical shipments as blackmail. You insulted me personally and attacked my species' credibility. And you did all of this believing I would continue to accept it, because I was trying to be diplomatic. She walked toward his table. I gave you 6 months of patience. 6 months of trying to resolve this peacefully. I gave you 47 chances to honor your agreements. You threw every single one back in my face. So now we do this the hard way. Commissioner Thelvar reviewed the documents on his display. Ambassador Wei, your evidence is comprehensive. The Commission finds sufficient grounds to proceed with formal sanctions. However, I must ask, what outcome are you seeking? Chen pulled up her final document. Full restitution to all affected parties. Compensation for delays and damages. Complete restructuring of Verkathi trade practices under Commission oversight. Public admission of violations. And personal sanctions against Trade Minister Zixthar for his conduct during negotiations. The numbers on the screen made Zixthar antenna droop even further. The restitution would bankrupt the consortium. The restructuring would destroy their business model. The sanctions would end his career. This is unreasonable. Zixthar's voice was desperate now. We cannot pay these amounts. The consortium will collapse. Thousands of my people will lose their jobs. Their families will suffer. How is this justice? Chen's expression did not soften. You should have thought about your people before you decided to commit fraud. You should have considered the consequences before you mocked dead children. You made your choices. Now you live with the results. She paused, then continued in a quieter voice. However, I am not interested in destroying innocent Verkathi families. I want justice, not revenge. So here is my final offer. Full restitution paid over 10 years instead of immediately. Restructuring with gradual implementation. Trade Minister Zixthar resigns and is barred from diplomatic work. The consortium submits to 5 years of oversight. The terms were still harsh, but they were survivable. The consortium would be damaged but not destroyed. Zixthar would lose his position, but his people would have a chance to recover. Commissioner Thelvar looked at the Verkathi delegation. Do you accept these terms? Zixthar looked at his fellow delegates. They were all staring at him with hard eyes. This was his fault. His arrogance. His mistakes. He had destroyed their reputation and nearly bankrupted their consortium because he thought a patient human was a weak human. We accept. His voice was barely above a whisper. The commission approved the settlement. Documents were signed. The hearing ended. As species filed out of the gallery, Chen could hear them talking. The story would spread across the galaxy within hours. Another species had learned what happens when you push humans too far. In the corridor outside, observer Grax approached Chen. He made the Draxian gesture of respect, touching all 3 hands to his chest. You fought well, Ambassador. You won completely but showed mercy at the end. This is why my people value our alliance with humanity. You know how to be both strong and just. Chen smiled tiredly. Thank you, Observer. I tried very hard to avoid this outcome. I genuinely wanted to resolve things peacefully, but they would not let me. Grax made a sound that might have been agreement. I know. I watched you give them chance after chance. They mistook your patience for weakness. This is a common error when dealing with humans. Your species has a reputation for being peaceful, but that reputation sometimes causes others to forget that peaceful is a choice, not a limitation. As they walked, other ambassadors stopped to speak with Chen. Some offered congratulations. Some asked questions about human legal strategies. Some simply wanted to make sure their own trade agreements were in good standing. A young Quellian ambassador approached nervously. Ambassador Wei, I am new to this posting. I have a question. How did you know the right time to stop being patient? How did you know when to switch from diplomacy to action? Chen stopped walking. She looked at the young ambassador with understanding. That is an excellent question. The truth is there is no perfect formula. Every situation is different. But there are principles I follow. She counted on her fingers. First, document everything. Always. You never know when you might need evidence. Second, give multiple chances. Make sure the other party understands your concerns and has opportunities to correct course. Third, watch for patterns. One mistake is an error. Multiple mistakes in the same direction is a strategy. And fourth, have a clear line. Know what you will not tolerate. For me, it is a tax on innocence, especially children. The Quellian took notes. And once you cross that line, what then? Then you act decisively and completely. Chen's voice was firm. No half measures. No empty threats. You use every legal tool available. You coordinate with allies. You pursue victory until the other side understands they made a mistake. But even then, you leave room for surrender. You do not pursue destruction for its own sake. She looked back toward the hearing room. The Verkathi learned today that patience is not weakness. They learned that giving chances does not mean I lack the ability to fight back. Most importantly, they learned that when a human says you have really pushed it, those words mean something specific. They mean the time for patience has ended and the time for action has begun. The young ambassador nodded slowly. I understand. Thank you for the lesson, Ambassador Wei.